Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for your patience. Oh, I see Michelle. So welcome and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Before I formally begin, I am going to ask if we can all hold just a moment of silence for those we have lost to the brutality committed through racism and bias. Thank you all. My name is Shayna Searcy, and I am privileged to hold the role of Director of Alumni Relations at SUNY New Paltz today. Today with me, I have several cabinet members who are going to serve as panelists for our session. I have President Donald P. Christian.
Hi, everyone.
Barbara G. Lyman, our interim provost.
Good afternoon.
Stephanie Blaisdell, Vice President for Student Affairs. David Eaton, Vice President for Enrollment Management and also an Alumni Council member. Michelle Halstead, Vice President for Administration and Finance. Tahena Pacheco-Dunn, Chief Diversity Officer and Associate Vice President for Human Resources, Diversity, and Inclusion. Erica Marks, Vice President for Development and Alumni Relations and Executive Director of the SUNY New Paltz Foundation, as well as a council member.
Hello, everyone.
And Shelley Wright, Chief of Staff and Vice President for Communication Marketing.
Good afternoon.
In addition to our campus leadership, we also have several members of the Alumni Council. These members serve as representatives of the entire Alumni Association and help drive alumni relations events, programming, and communications. They are here to listen and take feedback on how we can create and advocate for alumni programming and communications that support an anti-racist campus and an anti-racist alumni association. With us here today, and I hope I get everyone, because I did see one or two pop in that I didn't have written down, but Onika Jervis, class of 93 and 05. Claudette Aldebott, class of 2006 and 2008. Judy Bishop, class of 1982. Valerie Turco Tremblay, class of 05 and 2010. Robin Cohen Laval, class of 77 and 82. Alan Danefsky, class of 69 and 91. Kevin Sanchez, class of 2015. Brent Cutler, class of 79. Renee Padmore Bacchus, class of 91. Candace Dixon, class of 73. And Keisha Parker, class of 2000. And I hope I got all of you. If I did not, I do apologize. So what I would also like to offer in terms of remarks this morning or this afternoon before we get started with the open forum, as the Director of Alumni Relation, I would offer to all of you who are alum who have joined us here today that while we are here to talk about SUNY New Paltz and continue to move towards being an anti-racist campus, the Alumni Collective can reach far beyond the borders of our campus. As members of our global community, we have the opportunity to educate, inspire, do good work, and do the good work of dismantling racism in our own communities, our places of work, worship, our children's schools, and in our homes. For me, as a white person, I accept that this is largely my responsibility, and I'm grateful for those who will join me in this effort. I am also extremely grateful for those Black and Brown alumni who continue to offer guidance and education on this issue. Your spirit and commitment are undeniable. Thank you very much. Alumni Relations plans to continue to create opportunities for alumni like yourselves to share and listen through forums like this, to continue to help educate both internally and externally by sharing your experience, expertise, and ideas. And also we will create opportunities and call upon you to support our endeavors by soliciting you as alumni to support programs and scholarships of the college and foundation that impact our students of color and help educate our entire New Paltz community. So now I'm going to turn it over to President Christian to offer some opening remarks before I go over the ground rules, and we'll open the floor for our open forum.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate your support and your involvement in being part of this work to address embedded and systemic racism at SUNY New Paltz, and your willingness to share direct and honest feedback. We're interested in hearing about your experiences and your views on the right course for our campus and our future, and we're here today primarily to listen. We received the petition prepared earlier this summer by a number of alumni and signed on to by alumni, current students, faculty and staff, and others. In the weeks before we received that message in late June, we had also received messages from current students expressing some of the same concerns and encouraging similar action and attention that you as alumni are calling for. We determined that a single consistent message to the entire campus community, including alumni and current students, was the best way to express solidarity with those concerns and to share most comprehensively some of the steps that we're taking and plan to take to advance the goals of becoming an actively anti-racist campus. We sent that message on June 30. We hear the concern that some alumni were upset that they did not receive a personal response. We're aware that our 64,000 alumni represent diverse viewpoints and receive communication very differently. So we want to evolve more effective communication strategies to reach and engage alumni in this work. One of the topics that I hope we can talk about today is how we can both hear from alumni and how we best share updates about ongoing efforts. And I hope we might call on our alumni council to play a key role in that ongoing communication. And I'm glad that so many members of the council are with us here today. We're keenly aware that despite the positive steps that we've taken and the student success that we're very proud of, we have more work to do, even as we face the challenges of sustaining the campus through a pandemic, which is presenting an existential threat, financial and otherwise, to colleges and universities across the country. The COVID-19 pandemic drew into stark focus the disproportionate impacts of the pandemic on communities of color and the ways in which systems like healthcare, housing, and education are not equitable to all. We accept the imperative that colleges like SUNY New Paltz must contribute to critically examining and dismantling systemic inequities and systemic racism. We understand the anger and the frustration and the impatience at the pace of change around racial injustice and inequity in American society, including in educational institutions like SUNY New Paltz. We want you to know that we'll be doing everything we can to advance this agenda amid the current other challenges that also demand our care and attention. So I look forward to our conversation this afternoon, and again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, President Christian. So we're scheduled to be together until about 5:45 p.m. this evening. In this, our third in our series of community conversations throughout the summer. So just to give you some background information, if this is the first time you are joining us, this is the third of these town hall series. And in addition, cabinet and student leaders from SA and RHSA have met at least 2 other times to discuss these issues and continue to work together to plan this series of town halls, which we do hope will continue into the fall in the future. Tonight's town hall is titled Dismantling Racism, Alumni Perspectives. In this session, we hope to provide space for many alumni voices to share their experiences and help steer our thoughts and ideas into actionable work that support our commitment to becoming an anti-racist campus. We understand the collective experience in this area is powerful and hope to shine a light on where we have come from, where we still need to do work, and how our alumni voices can help us move forward further and faster. Please use the chat to raise your hand to share an experience, an idea, ask a question, or offer a comment. Again, our panelists are here to listen to what our alumni have to say and offer this as a listening session. Mike McInerney will let us know the order of those who have raised their hands and call on you one at a time. If a question is being asked, President Christian may offer insight or answers, but may also invite other members of the administration to respond or add additional information. We want to be respectful for those who do not want to ask a question, but instead want to share an experience or offer a comment. We want to listen carefully, hold space for those comments and experiences, and appreciation for sharing with us rather than a response or correction. So our ground rules include that we ask you offer your name and relationship to the college when you are called on. For example, your name and class year, as I did with our alumni council members, or your name and department if you are also a faculty member here. Please speak from your own knowledge and experience. Practice reflective listening and be respectful of your fellow participants. And lastly, we do want to hear from as many people as possible. So we ask that each person try to keep their comment for sharing to 2 to 3 minutes. Okay. And if there is nothing else from the panelists, I will turn it over to our panel and also to our audience to give you an opportunity to share your experiences with us today. Thank you.
All right, looks like we can begin with Kristen Holness.
Hi, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right,
Kristen.
great. So hi, everyone. My name is Kristen. I graduated last year, class of 2019. And in terms of my experience with New Paltz, I was very involved in different aspects of campus, from social organizations to fraternity and sorority life. I was student ambassador, welcome center. So I do think that I have a well-rounded perspective of campus. In terms of the topic of conversation today, I personally was never affected by racism on campus in terms of as an individual. However, as I did on campus, would like to use my voice to speak for other students in my position that have been affected. And I think that it's because it's such an issue of something that's systemic, it's sort of people just like, oh, if it comes up, we'll handle it in the moment. But what I did notice is that we address things like sexual assault, trigger warning for anyone that's on the call, and anything related to those types of situations in orientation, for example. Every orientation group watches the Consent is Tea video, and it's shown, I feel like I've seen it at least 3 times while on campus. And it's very easy to find on YouTube, and it pretty much makes understanding what consent is very simple. However, it doesn't completely eradicate those situations from happening on campus, but I feel like if the campus is really trying to make an effort to stop something that has been a systemic issue, they need to address it from the, I guess, platform of the system. So it shouldn't be happening or only happening in individual classrooms, but it needs to be coming from administration. As soon as you come on campus, for both professors and students, there needs to be some sort of conversation on making the space equitable and understanding privilege. I think you can't just talk about, racism is bad, but if you're trying to make it an anti-racist community, you have to address the privilege that some students are coming in with that others are not, whether that be economic, whether that be class, whether that be race, all of that ties in. And please forgive me, there are other classes of people that experience oppression. So that also needs to be included to make it a completely equitable space, not just speaking on behalf of race. So I guess my suggestion is if we can find a way to include, um, anti-racist conversations as soon as students and faculty get onto campus, because then it's going to set the tone. There is no warning, that is your warning. You were informed what you should not be doing, what is not tolerated on our campus, as well as creating a space specifically for students of color. I was speaking with some other alumni and potentially considering a space in which alumni of color can connect with students of color so that they feel, that their voice is heard. Sometimes students feel like they may not be able to approach administration and be able to get a response. But if they can speak to alumni that are in communication with administration, that might help them to feel more welcomed on campus, like they're being listened to, like they're being heard, as opposed to, there's all these processes like, oh, you can submit a report here or a claim here, but it doesn't really go anywhere. You don't have anyone to really hold accountable. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you all for this opportunity.
Wow, thank you. Whenever I hear one of our alumni present a view so cohesively and coherently, I'm very proud. So thanks for sharing that. Stephanie, I see you're preparing to speak there.
And Tahina might wish to join me. I wanted to be sure that folks knew that we actually did implement a mandatory diversity session within orientation. We actually have two that we instituted this year. One, because we had to do orientation online, we had a mechanism to have students have to complete certain sections before they ever got to the opportunity to register. And the diversity and inclusion session is actually one of those mandatory sessions. Then we had another one. Tahina, do you want to talk about EverFi?
Sure. So we have something on an EverFi platform, which is a training platform, and we are fortunate enough to be able to have purchased a module that was created by a chief diversity officer in the SUNY system, specifically looking at it through the lens of a college environment, not just generically issues of bias and privilege, but specifically how it works in a college environment. And that's hard to find. And that project was really an interesting one for a SUNY CDO to be involved in the creation of that material. And we actually have the modules available to both students and faculty and staff. And it is the module that is available for all faculty. Actually, all employees are required to complete that training by October. And it was the basis for in-person sessions that we were fortunate enough to get underway in January before everything sort of pivoted for the world, where we were able to do workshops in person with about 400 faculty and staff.
Kristen, I would add, you mentioned a space where students could gather and where students and alumni might meet. I'm not sure whether you're talking about a physical space or a more symbolic one, but it's worth sharing here that we recently completed renovation of space in that passageway between the Student Union building and HAB in the basement, right next to the renovated EOP facility, as a new home for the Scholars Mentorship Program. And Mark Rumnick gave me a tour of that space yesterday, and it's pretty marvelous. I never would have guessed from what that space was like before the way it would turn out. And I know Mark is thinking about various programs to develop in that new space.
All right, next we can go to Craig Capelau.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for this opportunity. 35 years ago, I was traveling to New Paltz on my first visit, which was really move-in day. When I was traveling, I saw in the distance SUNY New Paltz coming over the mountain, the Shawangunk Mountains. I looked at the university, it was a shining university. And I could see the cluster of buildings, the residence halls, and I was wondering what it would be like to attend the university. Today I'm here addressing the university, which in Latin is scholars and teachers. My alma mater in Latin is nurturing mother, and it has been. You are. So I'm here to share just some reflections on my college experience, two seminal moments that I believe are will demonstrate to you some ideas. First, my interaction with diversity. I was very fortunate on my first day to meet the editor-in-chief of the Fahari. And I was walking out and he spoke and said, "How you doing, young brother?" And I wondered, well, am I a young brother? It could be. And he gave me a copy of the Fahari, the Black student newspaper. Fahari, pride in Swahili. And he said, "Read this newspaper and let me know what you think." And him being a hallmate in Boughton Hall, I had the opportunity to talk to him extensively about the paper, about Black life, and I learned a lot about Afrocentric perspective. I was very fortunate to have that relationship, and a couple of years later, we put together a newspaper with diversity in mind for the Residence Hall Student Association called the College Voice. Our goal was to cover the candlelight march or the vigil that occurred on campus to focus on diversity, our Latino and Black students, to bring people together. And that's what it is. I learned in college it was a microcosm. And L. David Eaton, our beloved dean, he used to take us on leadership trips and figure out how we can bring people together. And that is really important in college, because if we can do it at college, we can do it in the wider society. So it's a very critical point at college that people come together. How do we come together? How do we learn about one another and listen and develop skills and competencies so that we can make the world a better place? I remember New Paltz is always an activist school. My first week was as a protest for SUNY divest from South Africa for apartheid. I didn't know what apartheid was. So today I'm very excited to share just another seminal point and moment was my second semester as a freshman in February of 1986. It was a national event for Sojourner Truth. It was a US postal stamp that was issued at New Paltz, and I was there and I had the opportunity to listen to the Black Studies department for the first time and to meet students from different backgrounds all together celebrating Sojourner Truth. And even today, we are witnessing a revival of Sojourner Truth, and we are really the hub. She is our Shiro. And I didn't know about slavery in the North because in high school we learned mostly slavery was in the South. So Sojourner Truth is really a point of focus that I'd like to make here for the next year. I think we should have a common reading. I think students that when you get students together and you talk about Sojourner Truth, you're getting a wide range of diversity. I was in Kingston on the Life Walk. I saw everyone filling the statue that was built. And we are going to have, and I learned that we're going to have a statue by the same sculptor. But this statue is incredible. You can feel the grooves and the whippings that Sojourner Truth experienced during her time as enslaved. So we are today talking about Sojourner Truth, but yet she's going to be celebrated in 2 locations, in Central Park and in on the walkway over the Hudson. We are looking at Sojourner Truth being on our campus in 3D Life outside the Sojourner Truth Library. In addition to that, the entire year should be spent on focusing on reading her biography, the narrative of Sojourner Truth. We should do some paintings like sip and paint. We should have activities revolving around, and I've published a page on Facebook, Campaign for Sojourner Truth, and you can read all of the details of that. So today I advocate for Sojourner Truth. It will be the 50th anniversary of the naming of the Sojourner Truth Library and the 30th anniversary of the stamp and the 170th anniversary of her famous speech in 1851 in Akron, Ohio. So with that, I say congratulations on what you've done and accomplished as administrators, students, and faculty to bring the campus together with some changes. And we are continuing along with Sojourner Truth and focusing on a very positive role model, a Shiro of New Paltz. This is our Shiro, and we are going to celebrate, and I look forward to doing that with everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. I'm not sure if you're talking about a parallel initiative or if you're familiar with our campaign at New Paltz. We are commissioning a sculpture of Sojourner Truth to be positioned outside the Sojourner Truth Library. And it's, we've seen in Port Ewan and other places around the country, sculptures of Sojourner Truth as an adolescent in Port Ewan and as an adult later on. This is a sculpture of Sojourner Truth at age 29, which is her age, the age when she emancipated herself. And we're raising private funds for that project.
Okay, next we'll go to Aylin.
It's pronounced Allen, but that's okay. I have a completely different perspective of this whole thing. I'm an alumnus of the class of 53. When I was on campus, we probably count the people of color on one hand. And it was just, they were just included. There was no diversity, no thought about the fact that they were, quote, different. They weren't, they were just part of the campus. And so this is all very new to me. I taught in a biracial school for many years, and there too, it was, I don't know, somebody told me that I was colorblind, but I don't see it as that, but it's just, I'm just finding this very interesting, listening to this point of view, because there was never anything like that when I was here. That's ancient history. So thank you for having this and for me being able to be here.
Thank you. And I will share that we hear the stories on occasion from alumni, Black alumni, Latinx alumni who were here in the 50s and 60s and had experiences not terribly different than we're hearing from students in the 21st century and every decade in between.
Okay, next we'll go to Dee Jones.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Great, thank you. Dee Jones, class of 2008. And I kind of want to just go back to what the first speaker was talking about, or alumnus was talking about, regarding addressing privilege, because, you know, I think it was great. You sort of addressed all of the other points that she had made in terms of creating space and education in terms of like orientation when people start. But I really also keyed into what she was talking about regarding privilege, because that has been something very eye-opening for me. And I would like to, I guess, just ask that maybe be addressed, or some education about the type of privilege that many of us have. And, you know, and it certainly comes down to how Black history is taught, right, from the beginnings of school. And so that's obviously a much larger problem. But if there is a way, and I'm sorry, I don't have a suggestion, to discuss that kind of privilege and help educate people on that, because I think a lot of people just don't understand it.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll go to Kevin Sanchez.
Hey everyone, my name is Kevin Sanchez, and I graduated from SUNY New Paltz in May 2015. I, like a lot of alumni that are with us here today, was very involved in campus. I was an RA, lucky to be an RA. I was in different singing groups. I really enjoyed my time on campus. The one thing that that I would want to like bring up and to put on the table today is for what I would like to see as New Paltz institution to take a closer look is at the social cohesion on campus. I just remember on campus always seeing like silos of different groups of people, whether it be because they come from like the same like socioeconomic like region, or they have the same like cultural background. I always saw, and forgive me for using this word, but like different like cliques or tribes. I think in my mind, the way that I see it is that when people first go to college, it might be someone's like first time going to college, and their family, it might be first generation, or it might be your family might have experience with going to college, but I see New Paltz as like this like melting pot, just like other universities are, just a big like melting pot of different people coming together to learn. And so what I see is people from different socioeconomic backgrounds coming together and maybe not like meshing well at first. And you know, while the semester progresses, people can start bonding and creating social connections over like activities, or you know, just by simply living in the same dorm. But I think from like the onset, it would be nice to see more of an emphasis, and maybe New Paltz has been doing this, but I've been 5 years out, but more of an emphasis on some like anti-bias awareness from like the onset, and like a better I guess like a better way of, you know, promoting social cohesion. And of course it's like so hard, and I think I'm gonna leave it at there. But other than that, I feel like, you know, once people get the chance to like bond over, you know, intramurals or like, you know, different affinity groups, I feel like the social cohesion on campus improves definitely. But yeah, I just wanted to put that on the table. Thank you so much for this time.
Thank you, Kevin. I don't know if Stephanie, Tahina, do you have anything you'd like to offer in response?
I can't see Tahina, but I wanted to mention, I think you're right on, and we do try to create structured opportunities for a learning objective for all of our students to develop cultural competency and have opportunities to interact in meaningful ways. The Student Association last year worked closely with our athletic Wellness Center and sponsored a unity game during the men's basketball season. So that was a very intentional effort to use something that was a uniting activity to talk specifically about the team's pledge to support diversity and inclusion and the fans' commitment to that as well. So that was a pretty meaningful moment that those groups came together.
Thanks, Stephanie. Tahina, I see you're unmuted. Are you?
Yes, I think there's also, I think that there's a different place for different people to come into the conversation. And I think that part of doing this work is also meeting people where they are so that you can help bring them along further in the conversation and in their own confidence, whether that's building their own skill set or just their knowledge base on how to approach this the subject matter, especially if you are someone who's never really had to deal with the realities of privilege and racism and systemic oppression. So I believe strongly in meeting people where they are and helping them to gain better understanding and better tools. And I think people come into this conversation at different points of comfort. I want to draw attention to, our theater arts department. I think that there has been a lot of access through art in that way. I think that that there has been a lot of intention in trying to create spaces for more diverse work to come into the curriculum. And I think that that's a way of introducing the entire community to those issues and to helping people talk about it in spaces that that bring us all together as people. The arts and food and tend to galvanize communities, and that's an excellent venue to do that. And we also have, we have such a wonderful, we're so blessed to have the faculty that we do, because there are so many people whose scholarship and areas of interest are in this subject matter, and they bring such dynamic speakers. They, they share their classroom space. They're honored as authors on our campus around these issues. And I think that those are different ways in which people can come into the conversation. And I think our work is to keep those open, accessible, and continuing.
I might add that we have, there's a marvelous initiative underway at SUNY New Paltz, faculty-led with student leadership and involvement as well, titled Black Lives Matter at School. And a number of the faculty leaders in that effort are on the call here today. But I think one of the impacts, positive impacts that we'll see over time with a program like that is increased faculty capability to lead the kinds of conversations in a classroom that cross some of those boundaries. And so we're very excited about that effort that has been moving along.
Okay, next we'll go to Alan Q.
Okay, am I good? Can you see me? Test, test. Cool.
Yes. Hi.
So basically, I wanted to just start out by saying, I really wanted to say that what Tanhina, is it Tanhina? I don't want to mispronounce, but what you said about people being galvanized was that really resonated with me, because I felt galvanized as a student at SUNY New Paltz. I graduated in 2016. So, and I was very involved with the activist culture there as well. So basically, what I want to say is that I don't like the term diversity and inclusion doesn't sit well in my body. Like when people say that, I cringe. It doesn't sit well with me, because it feels like a buzzword that's been watered down by capitalism to be like, oh, like we're diverse and that makes us special and this will bring in like more funding and we're inclusive. It doesn't feel genuine to me. Not all the time, but most of the time, it doesn't feel like a genuine anti-oppressive stance that takes into account people's lived experiences. A lot of the time it feels very just surface level. And my next point is that I really do implore the white administrators, especially on this point, to talk about empathy, and not this faux empathy that I've been seeing from people where they kind of just nod and they're like, oh yeah, like I know, I totally know what you're going through, or like, that must be so hard for you. But really sitting with people's experiences and wondering and connecting with folks and saying, huh, I do wonder what it's like to be targeted just based on this. Or I do wonder, and actually connect with folks and sit with how that feels in our bodies and not do the white supremacist thing, which is let's just be automatons and we're only neck up and we only think things. Because I don't see anyone talking about feelings here. We're just talking about logic. We're talking about plans. We're talking about logic, logic, logic. And I'm over here like, how is this making people feel? Where's mental health in this situation? How do people of color feel? Like, that to me is where liberation comes from. And that's what Black feminism taught me. Taught me that all this stuff about, you know, thinking, that to me is great and all. We have to use our brains. And if we don't feel our bodies, if we don't feel the traumas and heal the traumas, and if we don't connect with other folks, we're going to get nowhere. So I'm going to end this rant with a quote that I was taught in a Black Studies class, which was, we can have a racist society with no racist people. And what that means is that you can have all the diversity trainings you want, but our society that was literally founded on colonization and the murder of indigenous people and enslavement of Africans, everyone can be we all holding hands, we all diverse, yet there's still a system that's at play that still kills people, that exploits people, still, you know, all that horrible stuff. So I want to end this by saying thank you for listening to me. I know I'm a lot right now. I'm very energized. I'm really passionate today. And I'm really excited that a lot of my alumni are here. I love all of you. Robin, if you're here, I love you so much. Thank you for teaching me this too. The reason I'm like over here is, the reason I know all of this is because of New Paltz. So I just wanted to extend the gratitude and be like, full circle is like, I am sitting here in my power and my truth because of women's studies and gender studies and Black studies and sociology and criminology. And I want to just say that I am the person I am because of the community I had at that college. So I love you all. Bless you. Thank you for listening. So, yeah.
Thank you, Alan.
Yep.
Hi, folks. Just to remind everybody that if you would like to speak, you can use the raise your hand function. If you open up the participants window, you'll see it there. And just a friendly reminder to please keep comments and questions to 2 to 3 minutes. Next, we will go to Zachary Russeas.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. I see some familiar faces here.
Hi, Zachary.
My name is Zachary Russeas. I am class of 2015. I was involved in the Queer Student Union and the Student Association. Reflecting on what some voices of color have said in this chat and just in conversation, my experience as a white person at New Paltz has been so vastly different than what I've heard from Black and brown folks. And as a white person and as white folks, our role during this time is to listen and act if we are truly committed to being anti-racist. I know that there has been a list of demands that has circulated this summer, including, to paraphrase, enrolling Black residents of New York at the same level as they are in New York State, fully funding Black studies to have space for full-time professors, the college doing equity audit checks on courses to make sure there is a more anti-racist curriculum, having 2 full-time Black faculty in each department, and defunding UPD by 75%. I think it's really excellent that we're having this conversation, but as a white person and as white people in this chat, if we are not actively listening and doing what these Black voices are telling us to do, we are being racist. So my question is, how can the university hear these demands and meet these demands in order to make New Paltz a more anti-racist space? Thank you.
Zachary, I would encourage you to have a look again at the June 30 message from the administration to alumni and students about some of the active steps that we have underway and some of the work that we're contemplating as priorities for the coming year.
Okay, next we'll go to Claudette Aldabot.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Claudette Aldabot. I graduated in 06 and then again for my master's program in 08. And then after graduating with my master's, I worked in New Paltz for 6 years. So I've spent 12 years of my very developmental stages at New Paltz, and I've been connected to New Paltz via the Alumni Council since then. I think I want to start by saying that I have so much love for New Paltz. New Paltz is a place where I can just go and feel safe, go and kind of feel like that's home for me, and it's still very true now. But with that being said, I think for me, my hope is that the administration and New Paltz can take this pivotal moment that we're having in our nation and take it, not just kind of on the surface, kind of manage things, but really take this opportunity. I think we're one of the finer and very instrumental institutions in the Hudson Valley region. And how do we lead? How do we lead to the future? How do we lead with intention and just with this grit, right? I think I'm really close with a lot of student New Paltz alumni, and we all have such a devotion for New Paltz. But with that comes a lot of responsibility on our behalf. So I'm so glad to see a lot of alumni. I was really rooting for a lot of alumni to join this conversation today. I think there's a lot that needs to be done. And I think a lot of conversations are great, and a lot of symbolistic art or statues is really important. But for me, it's how do we hone in and how do we do this soul searching that we all have to do? Not only as individuals or communities and institutions, but as a nation too. So I think this is the right moment for us to look into our foundation as an institution. What do we stand for? What are our core mission or our values? And I think this is that time for us to re-engage with that and do some unlearning. And I think that's how we're going to evolve as a community. So I just wanted to highlight that because I think there's a lot of conversations happening here, but it is my hope that we are doing that and we're really engaging in true, honest conversations, and we're not shying away from the conversations that are difficult and or uncomfortable. They need to happen. They need to happen now. We all need to lean in. We all have a responsibility in this. This thing does not belong to one person or the other. It belongs to all of us. And I think ultimately, as an institution of higher learning, it is important for us to lead with that, right? If we are engaging all this youth, the youth in educating them, this is part of that education, right? Where we teach them that diversity is not a thing it's not a thing that we need to do, but diversity is our strength as a nation and as communities, right? So changing that narrative, it's so important. So thank you all for being here. It's so great to see the alumni. I'm very connected to the alumni, but it is my hope that we can continue to do that. And I know that I will bring my voice to the Alumni Council to make sure that we're carrying on. It is time that we lead with inclusive pedagogies, with inclusive, just a starting point, are we being inclusive in all we do? That should always be a key question. Are we being inclusive? Are we including everybody? And if we're not taking care of the least privileged, then we're not doing anything at all. So I just wanted to say that. I'm so glad to be here today, and let's keep the conversation going.
Thank you, Claudette, and thank you for your work on the Alumni Council. We appreciate it a lot.
Okay, next we'll go to Kelsey Ryan.
Hey, I'm going to yield my time to Black voices because I've seen way too many white people speaking. I know that Jada Young has her hand raised and also JSB, so I would love if my time could go to one of them. If there's time at the end, I'd love to share, but I will pass the torch for now.
Okay, next in line we'll go to Cassandra R.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be in this space with you guys. I'm actually an alumni class of 2011, so it's been a little while. While I was on campus, I was president of AWA, which is the African Women Alliance. I was also part of Envy Fashion. I was just kind of doing a little bit of everything. I was an EOP student as well. Um, Definitely, I hear a lot of the same consensus of a lot of the things that I was going to mention that a lot of my fellow alumni have already mentioned. So I'm not going to spend too much time before you. The biggest thing is that, like what was mentioned before, statues and different things like that. Yes, they can be endearing, but we need something that's a lot more than just a statue. We need organizational change. And going piggybacking off of what Alan said, thank you, Alan Q, for mentioning that. In order for an institution to be truly anti-racist, it requires that everybody that's a part of that institution to have an identity check, to really go inside of themselves and take a look at their own personal privilege, as well as their intersectionality of privilege, because there's different levels of privilege. I'm standing before you as a Black woman, but I'm also an educated Black woman. There's privilege with that. And we have to be able to own the space and to be able to understand what privilege are we holding? What power do we hold in that position? And if that's the case, what do we do with our privilege? Privilege in within itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It becomes a bad thing if you don't do anything with it. So in order for New Paltz to really be an anti-racist organization, that's one of the things that we have to do on all levels. I don't care if you're a janitor. I don't care if you work in the cafeteria. I don't care if you're the president. I don't care if you're a counselor in a counseling center. Everybody needs to take part of this, and especially the police, the campus police needs to make sure that they take a part of this as well. Everything that has some kind of presence and entity on the campus needs to be able to understand their place of privilege, whether that's a professional privilege, and as well as, you know, just your privilege of just your intersectionality of where you sit. There's something else that I would want to just draw your attention to that kind of that goes really in depth with this. And it's actually something that I have a personal blog called Queen Warrior, and I actually put it up there, but I'm gonna put the link in the chat. It's called Dismantling Racism for Social Change Groups. And it really breaks down different levels of organizations, from an all whites club to a token group to multicultural to anti-racist. And it really shows like a clear outline. It's like 100 and some odd pages of how an organization can move through these stages to truly be anti-racist. So I just think that might be something that as a community, we might want to take a part of that. Something else that I want to add real quick, you guys probably already have it on your curriculum, but with that, if anything was to come up with a student and a student was felt like something was said to them, whether directly or indirectly, that was based off of their race, there should be some kind of group or a committee that the student can go to express this. Now, I've had experiences, not with New Paltz, thank God, but with other academic institutions, that they don't seem to really value their students. They value faculty, and they also value their connections outside in the community as well, more than they actually value students. I would think that like a check and balance group for this would have to be run by students as well, to really be able to look into it and try to help balance out the powers, because we could create something like this and it can still be very powerful in a way that doesn't really advocate on the behalf of the student. So I think it's very important to make sure that we honor people's experiences, and that even if somebody says, oh, well, that wasn't racist, if I'm as the individual take it as racist, then it was racist, kind of plain and simple. Those are just some of my thoughts. And just like everybody else who came here, I'm definitely grateful for my education at New Paltz. It was, all the Black Studies classes with Dr. Wade Lewis, who has passed on, definitely, and Dr. Carroll, Dr. Kaba has definitely empowered me as an individual to help me know and understand my history a whole lot better. And I hope that the Black Studies department is still as strong as it was when I was there, because it was incredibly strong. And that's pretty much it. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak in this space.
Thank you, Cassandra. I appreciate your comments. A couple things I would respond. One is that we definitely agree with you that changing building names and erecting statues are symbolic changes, and they're not enough. We have to get to the organizational change, and we're working on that. I appreciate your comments as a white, educated, male, tall. I hear you about privilege, and that's certainly a topic that we need to bring more onto the table of conversation. A final point I would respond to is that we are finalizing right now plans to put in place a bias response network, so that and we hear from students and from alumni when they were here that there was not a lot of clarity of where you go when you've experienced something that's racist or biased, or you're just puzzled by it. And so we want to create a place for students to be able to, and employees to be able to pursue those concerns, seek redress. We're having some conversations about restorative justice as ways to respond to some of those kinds of situations. So that's some work that's underway, and we agree with you that that's a real priority and essential. So thanks for your comments.
Thank you so much for unmuting me. I just wanted to have a quick response to that. That definitely sounds awesome. I also want to come from a lens that if something was to happen where a student or a faculty or anybody like that did feel like something was said based off of their race or sexual orientation or gender, anything like that, I don't think that it should be done in addressing the situation should be done in a punitive way. I think it should be done in a way where there's a deep learning experience, so that somebody else doesn't happen again, and it can actually allow both people to grow and to learn. So I'm very pleased that you actually mentioned, restorative justice, because that's essentially what restorative justice is supposed to do. It's supposed to help individuals heal, as well as help them grow and help them understand why something is the way it is and why it happened. So I definitely appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks. I might add briefly that we have we're looking at initiatives at the campus level, and also SUNY is developing some protocols and programs in restorative justice to respond to some of these kinds of happenings.
Okay, next we'll go to JSB.
Hello, good afternoon. So I just wanted to address Donald Christian's comments in the beginning of the conversation, alluding to a list of demands that alumni have released in June. And just for the sake of the record, I do want to read a portion of that letter that we published in June, just so that the video shows and the audience can understand where we're coming from. So I'll just read it to everyone. To the SUNY New Paltz administration and the governor of New York State. We are alumni of the State University of New York at New Paltz. After the Facebook video conversation with President Christian was published on June 5th, 2020, we have concluded that the actions being taken by Donald P. Christian and the college administration do not adequately address how they will provide a safe space and make necessary changes to ensure that the college is combating racism and preventing social injustice at the SUNY New Paltz campus. In response to the Conversation About Race event hosted by SUNY New Paltz on June 24th, 2020, We shared testimonies and historical events of the truth on how Black students have been constantly disregarded, discriminated against, underrepresented, racially targeted, and ultimately traumatized for years on the SUNY New Paltz campus during Donald P. Christian's tenure as college president. We follow these with a list of demands towards ending anti-Black racism at SUNY New Paltz, at SUNY and CUNY, and we also provide a list of endorsements, which has reached over 1,200 people. As alumni of SUNY New Paltz, we feel that it is our responsibility to ensure that current and future students do not experience the type of systemic racism we experienced. If Donald P. Christian, the SUNY New Paltz administration, and the College Council are serious about combating racism and promoting social justice, they will stop repeatedly hosting dishonest and superficial conversations about race and begin to make fundamental systemic changes towards ending anti-Black racism at SUNY New Paltz. In order to adequately combat and end anti-Black racism at the State and City University of New York in general, and SUNY New Paltz in particular, we are demanding that action be taken immediately to accomplish the following. So I'll just read 5 of the demands. Demand number 1, we demand the percentage of enrolled and retained Black undergraduate students, which are 8% and 7% respectively at SUNY New Paltz, to be no less than the percentage of Black residents in New York State, which is currently 17%. And as a side note, the first year Black undergraduate student population at SUNY New Paltz has only increased from 7% to 8% since 2011. Demand number 2, we demand the continuous full funding of the Black Studies Department and the Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies Department, and conversion of the Latino Caribbean Studies, Native American Studies, and Asian Studies programs into autonomous, fully funded departments. And this includes more full-time tenure-track professors for these departments. Demand number 3, we demand the college conduct an equity audit of all courses and provide the necessary training and other infrastructure support to ensure an anti-racist curriculum. Demand number 4, we demand an increase of quality, full-time, tenure-tracked Black faculty in all academic departments, in addition to paying adjunct professors at least $7,000 per course in solidarity with their 7K or strike campaign. And the 5th demand is we demand the response to this letter of demands from Donald P. Christian and the SUNY New Paltz administration by July 24th, 2020, with a plan of action that includes updating the college's diversity and inclusion plan to reflect all of these demands towards ending anti-Black racism at SUNY New Paltz. I'll just end this by saying we have yet to receive an adequate response from the administration at SUNY New Paltz. So the response that Donald P. Christian mentioned was actually inadequate. We did not receive an adequate response to this date. And I am class of 2013. I was the Student Association Vice President of Academic Affairs from 2012 to 2013. Some people may know me as Jonathan Espinosa.
Thank you. We hear your concerns and issues.
Yes, and if I may, this is Barbara Lyman again, and I am the interim provost here, the chief academic officer of the institution. I've been here for 10.5 months. And so I want to say that in that time, and related to some of the points just made, I find that there is a commitment to examining and re-examining the curriculum. I can't say whether it's going to occur in the form of an audit of each and every course, but I have heard from the faculty of the institution of a deep interest and a commitment to looking at the curriculum. So my intent this coming year is to work with faculty in that endeavor. Related to the point made about the diversification of the faculty, I think it's fair to say that in the time that I've been here, which is not a very long time, I believe I have seen come to fruition efforts that relate to parts of the conversation we've had throughout this time. And so, for example, we conducted searches this year for new faculty, as the institution does on a regular basis to fill faculty needs and to fill program needs. And so this year, I think it's worth mentioning that out of the faculty who searches that we were able to successfully conclude, that a considerable number, I'm not intending necessarily to commodify the faculty of color, but out of 18 searches, 8 of those searches successfully concluded with the hire of a faculty member from an underrepresented group. That represents the culmination of work that I have witnessed, that has been going on, and that has been starting to come to fruition. One thing that wasn't mentioned earlier is the fact that in terms of conducting searches before an academic department is able to launch a search, there is an expectation, it's treated as a requirement, that the search committee, the lead member or chair of the search committee, and others undergo training around the conducting of a search so that the search might cast a wide net and make sure that we certainly diversify pools of candidates, but in the end also conclude with successful hires of faculty that will help us to diversify our faculty members. So I offer those comments as I think indications of some of the work that has been going on and that will be going on to address some of the concerns that have been raised.
Thank you, Barbara.
Okay, next we'll go to Camille Jacobs.
Hi. Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Camille.
Everyone hear me? Sure. My name is Camille Jacobs. I'm class of 19. Ooh, I shouldn't even say the rest of it, but I will. Class of 1991. I must say that New Paltz is one of the coveted places that I'm glad to say I am an alumni of. I attended 2 other institutions and I only reference New Paltz as my alma mater. And so there is great pride that comes with and from being part of the fabric of this institution. And so one of the things that I will say is being an alumni who never really left, because I've stayed involved with the university through the years, you know, and I've had the honor and the privilege, you know, to have deep conversations with administration. And, you know, when I received the email about this, you know, the letter and everything that went on, as well as the other things that had come through the years in terms of the Black Studies Department, issues that were being had there and renaming the buildings and so forth. You know, I have to say with each phone call or any outreach that was made to administration, there was time set aside and made to hear concern. You know, and I've had the honor to sit and talk with President Christian at length in terms of plausible next steps. And so one of the things I want us to think about and deeply consider is when you speak of any harm that has happened, whether directly or indirectly to a group or groups of people, one is the acknowledgement of the harm. 2 is in acknowledging the harm, thinking about the healing, right? What is needed for the persons affected to begin the healing. And then beyond the healing and while healing, what is the next strategy, move, lane of empowerment, right? And so if we think about what is taking place right now in terms of those 3 aspects, the harm, the healing that's needed, and then imagining a new way forward, you know, if we think of those particular buckets, I think it will help us place what we're feeling right now, right? And so I've heard a lot about the harm that has been caused, right? And then the healing, where now we're looking towards New Paltz to have some type of reciprocity, right? And so we're looking for administration to make shifts, make changes, radical changes is what's being called for, right? And I use that word as opposed to demands, because when I think of the word demand, I think of, and if not, then what? If not, then what else, right? And if you don't do this, then, right? But when we're talking about making radical change, especially to an institution or infrastructure, we really have to think about what is in the best interest of that institution and not just self, right? What is it that is needed? What is it that unilaterally is going to bring about change? Who are the people that are involved in this process? So be it your stakeholders, but who are the people involved in this process? And then not just bringing them together to talk about it, but then what can be implemented to be done next? And I will tell you from my conversation with President Christian, while he is taking in all of the information, he's more so considering next steps, the direction for New Paltz, whether it be during his tenure or beyond that. He's absolutely thinking about next steps. And so, while we are on the call and we're thinking about and we're talking about what has gone wrong, we also have to pay attention to this chat, right? Because there's a whole separate meeting taking place in this chat, right? And a separate set of issues are being addressed, a separate set of issues are being brought out, right? And so one is, what are we doing about the information that's being, dispensed now? And then how are we taking care of the separate meeting that's going on in the chat? How do we make sure those concerns are being well addressed? And then how are we aggregating all of these concerns? And who else needs to be at the table for the plausible next steps? Right? Because it's great to have a meeting. It's great to have a town hall, concerns a voice, but then we walk away. And so beyond our anger and beyond our frustration, then what comes next, right? Is our advocacy, is change. So I want us to and not to shift the meeting, but what are plausible next steps? Where are we headed next? What are the next steps that are going to be taken by the institution? Or the alumni council, or the people that are, students? How can we empower students and amplify their voice? Because they are New Paltz as well. And so how do we then bring the collective wisdom of the group? Because I believe the answer is in this room and in this space right here. How do we bring that collective wisdom into fruition? Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. I appreciate those insights. Thank you.
I'm just going to jump in here. I know we started about 5 minutes late, but we're about 5 minutes over time this conversation. And I know we have a lot of additional comments in the chat for us to go through, that we can go through following up on this recorded session and to address those concerns as well. But it is time for us to end this session. I will offer President Christian or anyone on the panel for any final parting words. Otherwise, we will continue this conversation in additional sessions that will happen at a later date.
I would just again thank everyone for joining us and for speaking so frankly about your concerns, your experiences, sharing your ideas about approaches that we can take to become a better institution. And we deeply appreciate the love for SUNY New Paltz from alumni that I heard from many people, and we greatly value your continued support and endorsement and advice in how we continue to improve as an institution. Thank you. Shana, are you closing us? You're muted.
So sorry. Mike is working on that. Mike, do you have control?